Hello and welcome to WCAT. I'm Kiki Latimer and this is the Catholic Bookworm. And we have with us today Dr. Cynthia Toolin-Wilson, who's written an amazing book called A Memoir of Forgiveness. And I'm really excited to have you here today, Cynthia,
Thank you.
to discuss this incredible background story that you have. Cynthia and I have been colleagues for quite a number of years at Holy Apostles College and Seminary. I wish I had read the memoir before I met you. We would have had a different interaction.
Yeah, I think you would have had a very different experience.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So,
You want to start us with a prayer?
sure, I will.
Thank you.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
So I have your book here. It's got a beautiful cover.
Yep, that's my mother. She was a model, and my father was also.
And that's how they met?
I assume so. But, you know, when I was young, that wasn't a question that I ever bothered asking. So
Survivor, a memoir of forgiveness. So why is it titled that?
Well, I am a survivor in two ways. First of all, my mother tried to chemically abort me in 1949. And then when I was 11 years old, she told me that. I survived the abortion attempt because when she drank the medicine, I don't know the time frame of how long it takes for something like that to work. But when she noticed that she was starting to pass me, she was afraid that the medicine would kill her as well as me. And so she stopped drinking it. And I lived, obviously, you know, but I have some emotional scars, and there are many problems with my body that I believe came from that medicine. So I survived that way, but I also survived psychologically. My mother and father were not good parents. Maybe they didn't know how to be parents. I don't know, but they were not good parents. And while I was never, you know, physically tortured by them or anything, I was hurt emotionally frequently by them. You know, just snide remarks about how I looked or my abilities. So I did survive in both ways, mentally, you know, psychologically, and obviously physically.
So when you were 11, your mother decided to tell you about this.
Yes. Yeah. And, you know, I've never understood it because I loved my mother. I knew she was a little weird, even though I was a child, but I loved her. You know, she was my mother. And when I was 11, she sat me down in the kitchen, and I still remember, I mean, the scenario, you know, she told me to sit down on the kitchen chair, and she was obviously upset more than she would normally be. She was kind of like, I don't know, she looked like she might even have been sweating, and she was a little, not hesitant, but I think she knew that once she said these things, we'd never be back to normal. And she went on, and she told me that she had tried to abort me. And she said that she drank a chemical. So it was supposed to be a chemically induced abortion. And of course, at that point, you know, I knew something was like seriously wrong with her that she was telling me this, and that thought has always remained with me. If she had never told me, we would have gotten along okay. But she told me, and she said, I drank the liquid, and it was going to kill you. And so I said to her, well, why'd you stop? And she said, because I was afraid it would kill me. And I thought, wow, thank you. And I mean, I was 11 and I knew that was not right.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, she continued and she said, her father, my grandfather, who I had adored until that point, was the one who had gone to get the chemical from a pharmacist. Of course, this was long before Roe v. Wade, thank heavens, or I would be dead.
So you kind of lost both of them that same day.
Oh, I did. And it really hurt. My grandfather really hurt me because I've thought about it, even when I was writing the book, about how sad it made me that he had done this, because I loved him and I thought he loved me. And so I was, in my mind, it was like I would go through what he'd had to go through to get this. He had to walk to the pharmacy. And he was a jovial man. He'd been a construction worker. And I wondered when he went to the pharmacy and he got the medicine, what the pharmacist said. They were friends, and then how he turned around and walked back. And I wondered, did he walk slow or fast? And what stuck in my mind were his footsteps on the pavement at the same rate as my heart rate when I was in the womb. I have no idea, of course, but that's what came to me. So, so that was hard. I loved my mother, but I knew she wasn't right, and because nobody can, could she get angry? Wow, from nothing, 0 to like 1,000,000 in a second. And, but I love my grandfather in a different way because he was jovial, and so these two people that I really loved as a kid, differently, but as a kid, and they were going to kill me. And there's no other way of putting it. They were going to kill me. For
I
convenience.
think for many people, that distinction between, and I've come across it with, with quite a number of people, that distinction between what I call an unwanted pregnancy and the unwanted child. And I've seen people that are so focused on the pregnancy that they can't put the two things together in their minds. It's very common. I've heard so many women in the clinic that I've run say, I have to have an abortion because if I carry this pregnancy to term, I'd love the baby too much to give it up for adoption. And it's like, so there's this schizophrenia between, I got to get rid of the pregnancy because I'd love the baby. Wow. Really strange. And I had a young woman at URI came to me once after speaking there on the abortion issue. And she said to me, a number of years, about 2 years ago, her mother had come to her and said to her that you were an unwanted pregnancy. And she said that for 2 years she had thought that meant she was an unwanted baby. And I said, well, how's your relationship with your mother? And she said, well, it's always been good. She loves me and I love her. But she said, for 2 years, I've been confused. And I said, well, she does love you, but she didn't love the pregnancy. And I think, certainly with your grandfather, probably at that point in time, you were a pregnancy in his mind. You weren't you, the you that he did come to love. But I think when you're 11 and you're presented with those two things, just like the student, they're one and the same. I am the pregnancy. You were the pregnancy. Can't pull that apart when you're 11. You're right. You can't. And I don't know, when you're that young, even if you could, it would make any difference because your reasoning ability isn't that good then, But
yeah, so it was a disturbing revelation, and I never never felt the same about her after that. And that, of course, led to, a lot of trouble between us, because, we just never really got along. And I really don't think that she was smart enough to realize what had changed me. I couldn't forget it, though.
Right.
How do you forget that?
Yeah.
So,
I had sort of a second mother when I was years ago, someone I really dearly loved and felt very close to. And we were going on a camping trip, a group of us together. And as we were going on the camping trip, she mentioned to me, she decided to sort of confess to me, these confessional moments, that their cat had had kittens a week earlier. And she didn't want to deal with a lot of kittens. There were 6 of them. So she had flushed 4 of them down the toilet. And it was that, obviously not as extreme as aborting a child, but
still,
when I was
terrible.
reading your book, I was brought back to that moment, and I never felt the same about her again. And she was like a second mom to me.
Yeah.
We still had a relationship for many years, but that was always there.
Yeah.
That she had flushed kittens down the toilet.
Oh, I know.
It was just horrible.
Yeah.
So, if she had actually been my mother and had told me anything like that. Yeah. So, that was the only thing in my life that I could compare your moment to, but it was enough for me to realize, there's certain things that you just can't be told.
Yeah.
That
they can't be taken back.
They can't be taken back.
And that the instant you hear them, there's a change.
Yeah.
And that change to this day, I have no feeling for her.
Yeah.
It really killed it. So, certainly you have to pray for people who are, I don't know, was she evil in that act? She certainly was. But I think that, you have to pray for people who have done bad or stupid or flat out evil things.
Yeah.
But praying for somebody's soul because you know that they're probably in trouble is not the same as loving them. Loving them as we love on earth.
Right.
Loving as you love your parents, as some people love their parents. I wouldn't know, but I'm sure that that's not what I feel.
Yeah.
But I do pray for both of them.
Yeah, and I must say, I think sometimes these moments when people decide to do that, they're almost like confessional moments for them, and they use you in a way that they shouldn't be using you. They should be going to a priest or a minister or to somebody, and they're actually expecting you to sort of give them some kind of absolution.
Well, she was wrong that time. Really wrong. It's there was.
And then after that, both of your parents fell into this very dysfunctional. Maybe they were already headed in that direction, but you certainly were growing up in this very dysfunctional household.
Oh, yeah. Well, they both drank a lot. I think originally it was bottles of Narragansett beer. You live in Rhode Island, so you must know.
Yes.
Yeah. So they drank the quart bottles, and my father would not usually get mean when he was drunk, but my mother did. And she'd say some really bad things to me. But then she eventually stopped drinking beer and started to drink wine. And he did too. They both became wicked winos. And in a way, if I modeled my life on doing nothing that they did, I was guaranteed success, But anyway, so my father drank so much, he started to drink on the job, and he smelled of wine all the time, rancid wine. He really drank, and my mother drank, but not as much as him. But the minute she drank, within 5 minutes, she'd be mean.
Yeah.
And so it was really a horrific living arrangement. That plus, of course, she was weird. God love her. She came to be afraid of the gas furnace in the house. Right. And so Providence, Rhode Island, although it's not where I live now in Vermont, where it's really cold, it gets cold in the winter. She wouldn't run the furnace because she was afraid the house would blow up. So, that is not logical thinking. But my father, who knew this, didn't do anything. It's not right either, So it was really dysfunctional. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was cold. It was just the only word that fits my life when I was a child was the meanness, just meanness. And to this day, if somebody starts to be mean to me, like in a work situation or something, I walk away because I can't stand it. Right. It's like, if I walk away and you want to yell at me, you go ahead, but you're going to yell at the wall. You're not going to yell at me anymore.
Because you don't want to be around it. You were around it for so many years.
I don't, because it bothers me to such an extent. And I'm not going to say I've never yelled at anybody, but if I have, I'm sure that the pitch and the volume were not the same. And the words weren't either.
Yeah.
So it was really a awful, awful childhood. And
then you got away from it. You got married and got away from it. Mm-hmm. Got away from them, got away from, you talk about how dirty the house was.
Oh, it was filthy.
And that's interesting. Many, many years ago, I think maybe when I was in my 20s, I remember watching I think it was one or two times I ever watched an Oprah Winfrey show. Mm-hmm. And she was interviewing a group of women who were relatively poor. Mm-hmm. And at one point she showed a picture of a photograph of a bathtub that was filthy. Oh. And I thought of your description of the sink. Yeah. Where you had sort of run your nail down it, there was
and scrape the scum off it. Yeah.
And she showed a picture of this really filthy bathtub, and the women were saying, well, my bathtub doesn't look like that. I'm poor, but I can afford cleanser. I can afford, $1 worth of cleanser, and I clean my tub once a month or every couple of weeks. And so they said, this concept of filthy living conditions and poverty don't necessarily go together. That it's really got more to do with values, what you value, than how much money you have. And so I thought about that as I was reading your memoir, that you were dealing with not just poverty, but we're a place where cleanliness and just sort of normal, what we consider now normal clean living wasn't a value for some reason any longer.
Well, I think, I do not know, but I think that my father's serial adultery destroyed her. And so she wasn't interested in much. And I cite in the book when we had gone to a 4th of July parade in Bristol, Rhode Island. And she saw someone she had gone to school with, a man. And I don't know if there was ever anything between them when they were young, before they were married to other people. But the man, she was waving, and I think, I have it in the book, but I think she screamed out his name, and he looked up and he said, Bud. That was her nickname. And she was so ecstatic that this man remembered her name. She just kept saying, he remembered me. He remembered me. And, I think that at that moment, she knew that if she wouldn't have dated him because they were different ethnicities and religions. But if they had dated when they were young and become married, I think she knew she would have had a better life. And there's nothing you can do about that 40 years down the road.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I went through some of that with my mother. I think she kind of married my father on the rebound, and she had a love interest before my father, someone she was deeply in love with, but he was married to someone else and stayed married, and she wanted to have children, so she eventually left him. And I think my dad was kind of a rebound, kind of a marriage, and he was quite a bit older, a lot of issues. So I think she did have regrets. Yeah. She often would wonder about, if only I could have married Charlie,
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think that was part of the problem with my mother. My father, when he was young and not drinking for as long, after a while, if you're drinking a bottle of beer, quart bottle of beer every day, it is going to, you're not going to look the same. So when he was young, he was a model and he was good looking as she was. But I think that attracted her, that there was this young, handsome man who was interested in her. But as I state in the book, in almost no time, he was cheating on her. So
yeah, it's very sad.
Yeah, so it was so bad. I really think it affected her mind.
Yeah. I mean, so many people go into marriage really with no skills for marriage at all. I mean, I went into marriage with no skills for marriage. I don't know how we've survived for years.
I just say yes, okay.
We certainly, didn't come into it with any skills for marriage, really. But so you got married and managed to get away from this situation, and have this, lovely home and cleanliness and normalcy, and then your good husband is worried about your parents.
Yep, and that was
I was reading that part of the book, and I was going, no, just listen to Cynthia, like no,
yeah.
Oh, so, and you can see that your husband, whose name was not
Jimmy
Toolin, that he meant well and he was trying to be a good person.
He was a devout Catholic.
Oh, you could just see like his intention.
It wasn't going to be good. I told him, he said, I want to bring them here. I said, you're out of your mind. You have no idea what you're dealing with. And he said, no, we have enough room. We can bring them here. And it's like, you don't want to do that. But
my heart was breaking for you during that part of the book. I mean, I
was like, oh, well, I'll tell you, so we were in a ranch house and he had said to them, you can bring, your most prized possessions. So they brought everything. Everything had to go into the cellar. That made my father mad. It made my mother mad. So the first day we're already in trouble. And I just looked at him and I said, I told you so. Because, there was nothing I could do. I mean, they had sold their house, so they had no place to stay. So they came and it was really awful.
They brought their cats. They brought the cats.
Well, the cats didn't bother me so much, except that they were weird about the cats, So I've always had a cat. I have a huge Angora now that my deceased husband and I went and got maybe 2 weeks before he died. And it was, it was a blessing because now I have her and I know how much he loved her. Right. But, they brought the cats.
The litter box.
Oh,
not the bedroom.
But anyway, it was really, you know what? There are no words to describe how bad it was. I mean, I really just didn't know what to do. But he wouldn't listen. And I said, it's like, here we have this happy little family, and you are going to destroy it in about a minute. And he did.
And then he realized, and he was like, I'm out of here. I need to get away from this.
Yeah, so in the end, what happened, which I didn't approve of, he brought them here. He they sold their house. He brought them to our house. They had no place to go. And finally he had enough. and he put them in a nursing home. And I never got over that. I'm not going to lie. There was no love lost between my parents and me, but there is justice. And, you have to do the right thing. He wouldn't listen. So he did the wrong thing by bringing them down. But in the end,
towards the end of their life, right? At that point.
But that wasn't it. They didn't have a home anymore. They went from owning their own home, even though they were fighting like cats and dogs in it, I'm sure. And then they came to my house, our house, and then they fought like cats and dogs there. And he couldn't stand it. So then they went to a nursing home. And it was pretty unforgivable. I'm not going to say it's unforgivable. I know nothing is unforgivable for God, but I'm not God. So, it was very difficult for me. Eventually they died. And at the end of it was probably a little way after the time that they died. She died first, and then he died within not long. And they were both buried, of course. And then, a cousin of my father, who's actually younger than me, she called me and she said, I was in the cellar going through junk, and I came across this box of letters, and it was letters from her back and forth from my father's brother, my Uncle Roger. And, so they were communicating by mail. It was long before, even telephones weren't affordable at that point. So it's way back. And he was telling his brother, how much he loved me. And it was like, why didn't you ever say anything? Why didn't you ever stop her from torturing me? Never, not once. There were 8 letters. And when I received them, she sent me copies, and I received them, and it was like, I had no idea this man even lived. I had no idea that this was inside of him. Because
I think the layers of family dynamics, I think we barely get to unravel here in this life. The layers and layers of people's personalities and what they say and what they don't say, things that they think but never speak. It's just very sad.
It is. He told his brother how proud he was of me that I'd earned a doctorate, and he told me that he told Roger, not me. He told him that when I was a child, I had asthma, which I did. I still do. It rarely bothers me, but when I was a kid, I had bad asthma. And he used to send me to this doctor, asthma doctor, allergy doctor, I don't know. And my mother would always go by cab because she didn't know how to drive. So she'd take me, get all dressed up, like a model, and take me to the doctor. And it cost $7 for the doctor's visit. That's how long ago it was, right? So he put in the letter, I had to spend $7 every few weeks to get her to the doctor so she could have the shot so that she'd be okay. And he said it was worth it, because when you look at her now. At this point, I was a member of an auxiliary police department. And he said, look at her now. She's an auxiliary policeman. And she was a security guard, and she was in retail, and she would run people down, and I would. And well, if I had tried to run when I was 5, I would have got about 2 steps and collapsed because I wouldn't be able to breathe. But it was what got me was, he said, it was worth it. Look at her now. But he never said that to me. Never said anything to me that he even liked me. And so, who knows? Maybe my mother actually liked me. I don't think so, though. Yeah. But it's possible. I couldn't believe it. I actually sat down and cried when I read those letters. And, I think it was her who told me that neither one of them had graduated from high school. They'd only gone as far as 8th grade. Well, neither one of them did graduate from high school, but he went into the 11th grade. He almost made it. So, but it was like I was finding out these little family secrets, and I was finding out that he actually cared for me.
Right.
Now, mind you, he'd been dead probably 20 years at that point when I found this out. So it's like, well, what do you do with
layers,
this?
these layers of things where, things that shouldn't get said do get said, and things that should get said don't get said. And I wish I'd had it here. There's a wonderful quote by Seneca where, it says, we just, so little is understood here.
Yeah.
We get true. Little glimpses of reality, but so little is completely ever understood in this life.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because I think we might have been able to have had maybe not a normal relationship, but some relationship.
Right.
So I mean, if he had spoken up and said something, I don't know what, but anything. Right. I did know he was proud when I received the doctorate because I was the first person on that side of the family that even graduated from high school. So it's, but, wasting time on watching television or talking about a television show and avoiding all the hard conversations, in my opinion, this leads to disaster. And the disaster was that I never really knew my parents as parents. I have no idea if my mother even cared about me. I said that to my father once. I said, does she even like me? And he said, she loves you more than anything in the world. And I'm like, what? How do you treat the people you hate? Set them on fire? Really? It was ridiculous.
Human love is so complicated.
I know, but this was weird.
Well, and then when you add mental illness to that,
and alcoholism.
Yeah. I've been taking care of a friend. Well, she's been a friend for 30 years, my friend Carolyn, and she just recently died. And most of the years that I've known her, she's talked about her mother, a very abusive situation as well. But I know that when her mother was dying, she came home and took care of her when she died.
Yeah.
And then at one point in time before she died, she said to Carolyn, "You were a good daughter." And that was it. But then in the last, and she had a close relationship with her father, but not with mom. And yet in the last 3-4 weeks of her life, she would call out for her mother. And in the last 2 weeks, it was, "Mommy, I want my mommy."
Yeah, that's normal though. Yeah, that's normal.
The fascinating thing was about 3-4 days ago, going through her paperwork, I came across a eulogy for her mother. And I don't know if she ever read it at her mother's funeral, but in the eulogy, she talked about this last 3 months that she had taking care of her mother and how she had come to love her. And that in the end, her mother had said, "I love you" to her.
I never
and
heard
somehow
that.
Later in life, she lost sight of that and went back to the bad memories, I think. But just the complicatedness. Of these,
when you have only bad memories, it's hard to see the good. I do not think my mother loved me. Maybe she did. Who knows? I don't. She was tough, mean, miserable.
Yeah, that's
a miserable drunk. You know how some people drink and they get happy? She got so mean it was scary. And so when my mother died, I was not upset. I went to the funeral. I looked at her and I felt nothing. And I still don't feel anything. But when my father died, they died within like 2 or 3 weeks of each other. And it was weird because she went first and it's like my father died out of love, or it's like, what is this? Are these people all crazy? Anyway, he died. I was more upset by his death than by hers. I wasn't upset by hers.
Yeah.
She's just too mean. I mean, it's like she had been so mean to me for so long that I couldn't get past it. Now, I do pray, as I said, for both of them. I pray that, you know, that God has mercy on them. I don't know what else they've done in their lives. I just know from my experience. But,
Right.
you know, I mean, really, is it likely that I was the only person they attempted an abortion on? Maybe they had abortions because obviously she didn't want children.
Right.
So, you know.
She was what, 40 at the time you came along?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they could have had abortions in the past, or, you know, or still, I mean, you know, some people are fertile past way past 40. And so she could have been one of them, but I don't know. And my father, as I said, he had so many girlfriends that after he died, I got on ancestry.com. I did the gene thing, trying to find out if there was anybody that had my genes or the same genes that would be a brother or a sister. And I couldn't find any. But I looked, you know, it's like I would like to have had some family, but and if they hadn't been brought up by my mother, they might be normal.
Are any of us normal? I don't know.
Well, relatives. So it was,
for a long time you tucked this whole thing away, and then you went to Rome on a vacation.
So what happened? My husband at that time, Jimmy, who died of esophageal cancer, and that's after that I married Bill, and he just died in November of heart, liver, and kidney failure. So, but Jimmy had always wanted to take his mother to Rome because his mother turned 85. And when she turned 85, he thought that's a good celebration for that. So we'll take her to Rome. So we took her and the kids and we went. And and his sister, Mary. So we took, you know, let's see, 1, 2, I think there were 4 of us. So we went, and I was not Catholic, so I had no interest in this at all, except for going to the ancient ruins and shopping. Why not? You know, I mean, how often am I going to be in Rome, you know? So we made an agreement because I was not Catholic. I had no interest in it. And I said to him, and then I become a theologian, go figure. Anyway, so I said to him, to Jimmy, I said, you know, I'll go. We can have breakfast together and we'll have dinner together. And you guys can go do the religious stuff and I'll go do Rome for the regular tourists. So we did. And then towards the end, it was probably like 2 days before we were going to leave. And he said, I'd like to do something as a family. And I pointed out to him that we were having breakfast and dinner together.
That's enough family stuff.
Yeah. So anyway, so what happened was I said, I'll go on a bus tour with you if you can find something that doesn't have anything religious on it. And so he found a tour called Rome Outside the Walls that only had one religious thing on it, and it was the catacombs. So I said, yeah, I'll go on that one. So we went. Hot day in Rome in August. So we're looking at all these sites. It's great. We get to the catacombs, and I discovered that not only does the bus not have air conditioning, it doesn't have a bathroom. So I decide to go into the catacombs for obvious reasons. I'm walking into the catacombs. They're ahead of me. I'm walking into the catacombs and there's some people over here having mass. And I'm like, why are they having mass? It's not Sunday. So, no understanding at all. Zero.
You just can't control those Catholics.
Well, now I go every day. So anyway, I walked by the people who were worshiping, and I did find the ladies' room. And then I said, well, I'm down in the catacombs. I might as well go see what they're talking about. So I found the tour group. You can't go down there alone because you get lost and die probably. So I found the group and I joined it. And all I know is that the man who was talking was, ready, Asian, I think probably Vietnamese from the accent. Something to come in the future, right? So Vietnamese, and he was in a black cassock. Of course, at that time, I didn't know it was a cassock. So I'm standing there listening to him, and he was talking about, the persecutions and whatnot. And I've had this happen now twice in my life. You know how a ticker tape kind of goes through? It moves and you see what's written on it. Well, it was like I had a ticker tape go through my brain, and the ticker tape had the words on it, "The truth is in the church," and truth was capital. So I thought to myself, that's not right. It should be a small t. No clue at all. It's like, knock again. I didn't get the first message. No, but really, I thought about that, and what eventually hit me was not the message, which in itself was odd, although I had it happen again later in life. But it was that I knew it didn't come from me. I knew I hadn't heard anything like a radio or heard someone say something or seen something on a poster. I knew it did not come from me. So I didn't say anything at the time because I thought, well, that's really weird. And when I got back to Connecticut, we all got back to Connecticut, I told Jimmy, I said, I want you to call your parish priest because I'm going to convert to Catholicism. And he couldn't believe it. Right? I mean, he was like, what? Are you serious? And it's like, I said, yes. So the fact that Rome was hot that day and there was no bathroom on the bus, I really see as God's intervention because it changed my whole life. So first, I converted. I converted with this wonderful priest, Stanley Smolensky. He's now a hermit in Virginia or West Virginia. I think it's Virginia. Anyway, so he was excellent. We had the Life in Christ book, that little thing that's very thin. And so I went through the first lesson in about 10 minutes, and he said, well, I think we need to use something more advanced. So I studied with him for a year. And it was funny because, I'd go and I'd knock on the rectory door so I could get into his office. You had to go through the rectory to get to his office. And the housekeeper would look at me and she'd say, oh, dear, you're having a lot of trouble getting this, aren't you?
I love that line in the book.
It's the truth. It's so funny. And I said,
this one's kind of a dumb bunny. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I should have dyed my hair blonde, I guess. But anyway, so so it was really something to study with him because I studied. He'd give me books like this. He'd say, you're more interested than most people, so you should read this. It's like, okay. And I would. And so when I came back and, it was towards the end of the whole conversion process, he said to me that he had taught at Holy Apostles. One semester he taught spiritual theology. And since I am so interested in this, he said that I think that, you should go there and study. I was already a doctor. And so he handed me the registration form that had been sent to him because he used to teach there. So I went there and I went through, I got the MA, I got a 90 credit MA in moral theology. I went on to the Dominican House of Studies for my licentiate, and Father Mosey had been one of my professors. He was the rector at that point, and he hired me. I worked there for 28 years. So, I mean, it all goes back to that one thing, the ticker tape going through my brain. And interestingly, I did have that happen one other time. I had asked Bill, my second husband after Jimmy had died, And he said that, I asked him, I said, I want to go to Albertus Magnus. They have a really good creative writing program, and you can go, and it's only Saturdays, and not every Saturday. The other, you can do things online. And I said, great. So I went into it, and I was driving down. I remember distinctly, I had just applied. I was driving down to teach at Holy Apostles, and I was like, what do I want to do? Do I want to do something like, pro-life novels, or do I want to do a memoir of my life? And the ticker tape went through my brain and said, do nonfiction. It's like, okay, I get it.
Wow.
But, so, and that's how this book was written, so do nonfiction. And I did. But, yeah, so it's been an interesting ride. My life
at some point after becoming Catholic, this whole concept of, the power of the soul to forgive comes up.
Yeah.
Talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit.
Well,
I teach it about forgiveness in an ethics class in the past, and most people think of forgiveness with what we call responding forgiveness. And that's where, the other person who's done you wrong says, I'm sorry. And you say, okay, I'm glad you're sorry. But there's so many reasons, one being that people could be dead, that they're never going to say they're sorry, or they're not sorry. Or they're embarrassed. They're sorry, but they're embarrassed. There's a million reasons why you may never get that I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so when you don't get it, you can still, what we call initiating forgiveness. You have this power of the soul to forgive without the I'm sorry, which is so important.
It is. It is. I think, I did kind of get that sense from my father because of the letters he wrote. If he had really not had, I don't know if he was thinking of the abortion attempt or not, but the fact that he was happy that I had achieved things, that I was happily married, although I don't think he was particularly happy with the choice. But it was, my father was tough, but my mother was just downright mean. And I think that she was mean because I think there was something wrong with her. Now, part of it I know was within I think it was a couple of months. I wrote it in the book. I can't remember now. But she was walking down the street, and my father was talking to this young girl, trying to seduce her. And she saw it, and he was so engaged with this girl that he didn't even see my mother walk by. And so I think that she was so damaged from his adultery that she couldn't recoup. And so in that sense, what she did was probably, I could picture her being afraid that if she had a child, she'd be even less attractive to him because she'd be big. Or maybe she would put on weight after or whatever, or she'd have to pay attention to the baby and not to him. And, so I don't know. So I worked it out to the point where, I would say I've forgiven them, but it's not easy. They could have ended my life, and I've enjoyed my life. I think I've used it as well as I could. I've taught over 200 men that are now priests. I don't even know how many people, lay people and sisters. Yeah, I know. A lot of the people I interview, I've taught. But, it's so I've taught hundreds of people, the faith, or the courses, but the part of the faith that I was dealing with. And, so I think I used my life well. I had 2 good husbands. It was tough with Jimmy because of my parents, but I was with him when he died. He bled to death from esophageal cancer. And I was with Bill when he died in November of heart, liver, and kidney failure. And I just stayed there with them until they were gone. So I tried to live a good life.
Amen.
But
the only tragedy is not to become a saint, right? So that's what we're working on.
Yeah,
day by day.
But it was definitely more of a struggle, with my mother than with my father. I've often wondered why, and I think part of it may be that my father, he would live with other women. And so when he was gone, I was alone with her, and she was like in rare form. And so I think the interaction between us probably pretty much destroyed any possibility of a really close relationship. I mean, I was sad when she died. I don't want to see anybody die. But I was much sadder when my father died. But again, I wasn't like...
Yeah. I mean, forgiveness is a process.
Yeah, it is.
I don't think, especially, with little stuff, maybe, but with the big, I call them the big things, the big hurts in life. I think it's a process, and you either direct yourself in that direction.
Yeah, in that direction, you're right.
And you move that way, or you don't, but it's a dynamic thing. But it's not an overnight thing. It can take years to forgive somebody.
It can, yeah. My parents died in the 80s. 84, 85. I think it was 84. But, there just was nothing, there was nothing I could ever do right, ever.
Right.
Literally, never, And it's like, after a while, you begin to doubt your own sanity. It's like, I know I tried this dish.
Right.
No, there's a drop of water up there. It's not done yet. So, anyway. But I thank God,
it's a work of grace, too. I mean, I don't think we, at least with the big stuff, I don't think we all by ourselves are capable of forgiveness.
No.
It's a work of grace.
Not the kind that you need to give. You're right.
Yeah.
I think, that part of, because my life was really pretty unbearable, but I think that writing the book, which I do believe I was pushed in that direction with the little ticker tape. I know I was pushed in that direction by the little ticker tape going through my mind. But I wrote as accurately and as non-judgmentally as I could. I was honest with my reaction to what, there were times when I'd say to myself, my mother is crazy. And, I think I have that in the book a couple of times, but it was more that I was revealing what I was feeling, because of her actions. But the real reason that I wrote it was not because, not because I wanted to write a book about misery. Really, it wasn't that I wanted to write that story, which, I relived it, and I mean, I relived it in excruciating detail. Anyway, so I wrote it because I thought, if just one person who's pregnant or somebody who's related to somebody who's pregnant sees that book and reads it, maybe they can do something to prevent an abortion. So my goal was, my real reason for writing it was to hopefully prevent abortion. I mean, I never in my life, and I'm sure you're the same, would have dreamed about Roe v. Wade. When I heard that, it was like, no, I heard that wrong, and I listened and it was like, wow, this is enormous. It's a real change. Now, I mean, I know that, that it's not like 100% yet, but we're moving in the direction. People are still probably having abortions, but, and you'd be better informed about that than me. But
Missouri just passed that abortion up to birth for any reason.
Oh,
So complete license on abortion.
Yeah. So
Whereas other states, they're outlawing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mass.
The thing that gave me hope when that happened, because I could very easily have been dead, was, from abortion, my mother aborting me. But I think that one Supreme Court judge, I don't know who it was because I wasn't looking at the TV, but I heard that a woman ask him, why is this so, why is it different? Why would women's rights be taken away? And he said something to the effect of, because another person is involved. And I thought, thank God, finally someone who's not like, working in the church or, I know there are other groups that are against abortion, but it was like a breath of spring air.
Yeah, right. Another person is involved.
Yes, another person is involved, and that person will be killed. It is a death sentence. That's what it boils down to. I could have had a death sentence for doing nothing except being conceived. It's and that's what happens with so many millions and millions. So that was why I wrote the book, because I thought maybe somewhere someone will be led to pick up this book. And out of curiosity, my mother was beautiful. She was a model and she's on the cover. So, someone could pick it up and see the cover and say, well, this looks interesting, and end up not having an abortion or telling someone else about it and they don't have an abortion. It was a very, my goal really was to try to save life.
Well, I think it's a beautiful book.
Thank you.
I think you've done both a message out there about abortion and also about forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Father Paul Damaris, he's a pastor here in Rhode Island, elder priest. He's also the diocesan exorcist. And he spoke recently to me privately, and then he gave a talk at the cathedral. And he's talked about two things. One, he says that he calls them the three portals to hell are abortion, addiction, and abuse. And so you see that in people's lives. You certainly saw it, the attempted abortion, the addiction with alcohol, the abuse. He said they're portals to hell.
Yeah, and my father, certainly it was addiction to sex also.
And addiction, right. And we certainly see a lot of that in our society now with pornography and we have this culture of death. But then he said something which I had never heard before. He said there's two lies that Satan whispers about abortion to a woman. He said the first lie is before the abortion, he whispers in her ear, abortion's no big deal. Like it's no big deal. Just, do it, get it over with. It's fine. And that's the first lie. He said, but after she has an abortion, the second lie he whispers is, what you've done is unforgivable. And so, and you're now, worthless and an evil person, and what you've done is unforgivable. And so he says, that's the second lie. So first there's the lie about the abortion, and then there's the lie concerning forgiveness. And he said, it is as horrible as it is forgivable.
Yes.
And so, those are both the lies that we try to come up against. Abortion is a horrible evil. Don't do it. But God forbid you have done it, go for forgiveness and receive forgiveness.
Yeah.
So he said, those are the two sides of, like he calls them, the evil penny, And I think your book comes up against both of those lies. The lie of, abortion is a horrible evil. But we also can work at this process of forgiveness through our faith, through grace. It's a beautiful book. Thank you for writing it. Yeah, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, well, I'd love to, if I ever win the lottery, which of course is not going to happen because I can't play it. But if I ever, maybe I should go up $1 a week investment. If I ever did win it, I would buy a slew of those books and try to get them to any area where abortion is popular.
Right.
you know, it's, or still being done. And I mean, I know from what my mother tried with the chemicals, you know, that she was given by the druggist, you know, there's still going to be people who are doing that. There's still
Well,
going
now
to be abortion.
Well, CVS and Walgreens has just applied for the license to hand out the abortion drugs,
Oh my God.
which I'm sure they'll get, you know. So
CVS and Rite Aid?
CVS and Walgreens.
Walgreens. So I'm still
So-
safe going to Rite Aid?
I don't know
wanna
if they already have it or not, but my guess is they will follow suit.
Yeah.
The question will be whether Walmart, I mean, those are the four big ones, at least in the Northeast.
Yeah. It's
whether
such a
they'll-
tragedy. You know, it's like you take away a person's life before they have a chance. They don't even draw a breath.
Right.
It's
Not
just
only
a
that,
terrible
but
tragedy.
52% of the women that take this abortion drug wind up in the ER.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm surprised that these pharmacy companies want to take on that risk.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll take years of lawsuits before they wake up. You know, children being killed in utero, women being maimed by or dying from these horrible
Drugs.
things.
Yeah. So really what it boils down to is the culture of death is very strong.
It is.
It is still very strong.
Yeah. So again, it's a process, one day at a time. We fight the battles. The war was won on Calvary, but we fight the battles for the time being, one day at a time. And, and work on, you know, trying to stop the evil, and work on forgiveness in our own lives. And that's all we can do. Till we win the lottery.
If I win the lottery, I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, me too.
You know, I mean, to use money to save life.
No.
You know,
but it's really comes down to changing hearts, you know, one person at a time, changing hearts.
Well, you know, when I was studying at Holy Apostles, we used to talk a lot about the two vulnerable populations being the unborn and the elderly, which I now am. Does the hair show it? No, maybe it's the wrinkles. But anyway, we used to talk about that. And I was very concerned when my first husband was sick, because I stayed with him almost all the time when he was in the hospital, because I was afraid they tried to, you know, like euthanize him, or just, you know, and or just not give him the treatment he needs, or wait a couple of minutes longer than they should. And I never saw anything like that occur. But I know that certainly there are parts of this country, because, you know, there's just, the death rate is kind of skewed. But, but when he died, I was still very concerned. And then when I married Bill had heart problems, obviously. And we were in the emergency room one day, and I said to the nurse, this is dead true. I said to the nurse, should I learn CPR because he has a heart issue? And she said, no. She said, we can't afford to keep old people alive. This is true. She said, we cannot afford to keep old people alive. So you have no idea what you do when you give CPR to an old person. If they have osteoporosis, their bones break, they're going to suffer. They may live for a while. Maybe they won't have enough oxygen. And I mean, it was like I thought, well, if a young person walks in here, will you give them CPR?
Maybe if they're good looking, they might, you know, they'll judge them in some other capacity.
Yeah, but I was so horrified by that. And in the same hospital,
I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah.
I'm not.
In the same hospital, maybe 2-3 months later, he had more heart trouble. We went to the hospital. And you know how there's curtains between the beds?
Yeah.
Well, there was a curtain closed, and we were in one of these little cubicles. And I saw this woman come in who looked really bad. She was old, and she looked really bad. And the man walking behind her, he had his head down like, you know, she's not going to make it. So I didn't listen on purpose. But what happened is I heard the person who was in the ER, the doctor or physician assistant, went over and said, what had happened, she'd fallen, and I guess that she'd done something so that she was having trouble breathing. And he said, well, if we give her extraordinary care, there's no guarantee that she'll make it, and there's no guarantee that she'll be normal. So would you want her to live in a nursing home for the rest of her life? Because she can't stay here in the hospital. And he repeated it twice. And the man said, thank God, he said, do everything you can for her. And so they did. But it was clear they didn't want to. Right. They did. When Bill and I left, she was sitting up and she didn't even have the respirator on anymore.
Right.
She would have died for nothing.
Right.
For something that could be fixed with 10 minutes of treatment.
Right.
So that really did scare me. Now, this was when I first married Bill. We were married 17 years before he died. And that's a stupid thing to say, obviously. We're not.
We always say things like that, right?
Yeah, but we were married 17 years. So this was probably 15, 16 years ago, at least. And now I go to that hospital and it's 100% different. But it's like, they're actually, I walk in and I'm in trouble and they take care of me, and so I don't think it's the hospital. I think it's the people who are in charge of different departments. But I was so impressed that change had occurred. But it's like, I know that it's still out there.
Oh, it's out there. Yeah.
It's out there. I don't understand this culture's fascination with death.
Yeah.
Like it's a good. It's not everywhere. A good. It's a bad.
It's everywhere. And it's especially if it's in the music that our young people are listening to. I do the Facebook page for the Crisis Pregnancy Center that I run, and about 2 months ago, or maybe 3 months ago, right before Christmas, I thought I have to put up a Facebook thing. So I thought, well, why don't I go and take a look at some of the lyrics that the kids are listening to, because I'm trying to reach out to young people. And maybe I can use the lyrics from one of their top 10 songs this week, on the Facebook page. So I looked up, top 10 songs this week. And it was horrible. It was horrible. They were all about death and killing yourself and filthy sex, not good, sweet, romantic sex, filthy, dirty, nasty sex, rape, killing people while you're raping them. It was unbelievable. I went through all top 10 rock and roll kind of, pop songs of December 2022, and I could not use one line from any of them.
Wow.
And I went through all the verses of 10 top songs, and it was just sad, and life is no good. Life is about death. Death is, bring it on. Kill me while we're having sex. It was just filth. And I was like, this is what our young people are listening to.
Yeah.
I know that the country music songs still have some hope and love and romance.
Oh yeah, and joy in them. That's all I listen to is bluegrass,
not pop songs.
Yeah, boy, that's sad. That's sad, especially because young people are impressionable.
Right. Yeah. And this is what's pouring into their ears through their little, So. Do you want to end us with a prayer, Cynthia?
Yeah, why don't we pray a Hail Mary together?
Okay.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks for a great interview. It was fun.
It was fun.
Yeah, you take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You too.